So what happens? This is sort of a little bit out of left field, but what happens when there is a disagreement between the military and politicians? So does it depend on the type of disagreement? Does one take priority over the other? When is the military able to put down its foot and say, no, this is the way we're going? This is our domain.
Yeah, so that's complex in every country's system, right? Every country has a system of either civilian control over military and lessons learned over history, and establishing a system in which that level of advice. So, like I can talk about the U.S. military system, right? So we have political leadership, even civilian control over the all the different military branches, and then we have a military advisor to the president himself that sits on the National Security Council who can say, "Sir, this is a really bad idea," or whoever the head general is fighting the war for, who gets brought back and he can say, "Sir, based on my recommendation." And there's been some good books on where in our own history, the U.S. history, where that feedback has failed, right? That feedback on what you're asking me to do is not it can't be accomplished, or I need this or that. It's a very complex, but a very most people think that it's politicians sending soldiers off to war with no understanding of what's being asked of them. As a student and have worked at the highest levels of our government, I know that that's not true, right? We have a National Security Council. We've had past national security advisors, which sometimes were active duty generals. If you look at like General McMaster, General Colin Powell, that level of best military advice is what we call it to political leaders is there, and after hard learned lessons and past failures or past wars, things like that. So it's a constantly evolving system where the military is in position to give best military advice and to make strong recommendations before a war starts, as the war is developing. It is a human endeavor, so the humans are fallible. So there have been bad generals who give bad advice, but this is where I get into kind of urban warfare. Like, eventually, the military must execute the orders that they're given. Now, there is of course ethical, moral. As a U.S. officer, I committed to an oath to the Constitution, not to the president or the political leaders. So there have been times in history where the military leader says, I will not follow that order because it's not within our constitutional values, right? And that's why Army officers committed to an oath of the Constitution. And there have been examples in recent history, right? Like Colonel Alexander Vindman, military officers who say that this is not right. And then there's, again, those three populations, and they can go public and say, what we're doing is not right. But eventually, if it's an constitutional, ethical, moral, executable order, militaries, you follow orders. And sometimes people get disgruntled, like, I don't agree with this war. Like, you're serving in the military, this is the mission you've been given. And that sometimes that is called can do, right? So the U.S. Army is called, you give me the mission, I can do it. It's really complex, but I'm a very strong advocate. Like, eventually, and there are examples like First Battle of Fallujah, like, look, which is, I think, is one of the best examples in the First Battle of Fallujah, when 4 American citizens were killed. It hits international media. It impacts all those populaces. And the president and the National Security Council and the National Security apparatus says, execute a mission in response to these 4 civilian deaths. And the U.S. military general said, I don't agree with that. That will go very badly, sir. I recommend you do not tell me to do that. Which is a great example of responding. And then the president and the highest level general said, I understand your opposition, execute. You salute, you execute that mission, even if it's long as it's a constitutional, moral, ethical, lawful order, then you execute.